We've all been shocked and saddened by the sudden and untimely passing of a true giant, Rabbi Lord Sachs, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. I myself have many cherished memories of my 12 years in his rabbinate. Proud that he's one of the signatories on my smicha rabbinic ordination, and that he was the chief rabbi who inducted me into my first two positions in the rabbinate in Watford and Barnet. But I think we all recognize that we've been extremely fortunate to live at the same time as this exceptional individual. And we know that we've been truly bereft of his genius, wisdom, his breadth and depth of knowledge, his brilliance with the written word, and of course, his oratory excellence. When we were privileged to hear him speak, we were left mesmerized by his words. We were moved, we were inspired, and we were proud that he was our representative in this world. And after hearing him speak, it was often the case that we felt we couldn't quite repeat what he said. We knew the words, and we knew those words had touched us, but somehow we were unable to do justice to convey those words to others. But for all his brilliance and for all his genius, there was another side to this great man. It was often said that Rabbi Sachs was not a people's person. But from hearing the many tributes from my rabbinic colleagues and from lay people alike this week, he clearly, for someone who was not a people's person, managed to have a deep and profound impact and touch so many people's lives. He did this because he had a big heart. And as Rabbi Joseph Dweck said this week in paying tribute to Lord Sachs, his heart even eclipsed his mind. We're currently reading the Torah portions which deal with the story of the life of Sara and Abraham. And we're told in the portion 2 weeks ago that when they made that journey to the promised land in Lech Lecha, they went Vet HaNefesh Asher Asu V'Charam. They went with their many followers, people they had transformed and inspired by their teachings and their words. But perhaps being more than those leaders that they were, being more than the founders of ethical monotheism, Sarah and Abraham are remembered for the kindness that they exemplified. They're remembered for their open tent. They're remembered for how, as we read in last week's portion in chapter 18, while convalescing at the age of 100 after his circumcision, sitting in the heat of the day, Abraham is concerned that he has nobody to welcome into his home. And when he sees 3 travelers that God sent, he runs to greet them, and both he and Sarah prepare for them a feast. Because they're remembered for their chesed of Abraham, the kindness which both he and Sarah embodied. In chapter 24, the main story of this week's portion, Chayei Sara, deals with Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, charged with the mission of finding a suitable wife for Isaac. And Rebekah is selected as that wife due to her fine attributes of inexhaustible kindness, how she showed a tremendous quality, going out of her way to ensure that the weary traveler Eliezer and his camels were taken care of, that they were fed properly. And according to our commentators, Eliezer came with 10 camels, which means to feed them, she must have gathered close to 140 gallons of water. And 67 verses of this week's portion are dedicated to this story. But what's the reason for that? And if we look closely, we can ask another question and learn an important lesson. When Eliezer gets to the well of the town, he makes a strange prayer to God. He asks God to make his mission a success. And he says that the first woman who comes out, and he asks her, "Will you give water to me and my camels?" And she does, she will be the suitable wife for Isaac. And no sooner had Eliezer finished speaking that Rebekah shows up at the well. And the commentators say that if you look at the verse in chapter 24, verse 16, the Torah is telling us something. It says she descended to the spring, filled her jug, and ascended. That ascent, say our commentators, is not referring to Rebekah herself. Rather, it's referring to the water. The waters ascended. She filled her jug and the water ascended to meet her. In other words, there was a miracle and the water came up from the well and she did not have to exert herself or bend down to get it. Upon seeing this miracle, Eliezer runs over to her to ask her for a drink, to carry out the test to see if she will give him and his camels that water. And I once heard the late Rabbi Isaac Bernstein ask, come on, he's seen a miracle occur. The waters have risen to her. Surely he can dispense with the test. Surely he does not have to ask her to see if she'll give him and his camels to drink. After all, she's surely suitable for Isaac. She's had a miracle occur to her. Says Rabbi Bernstein, miracles are all well and good, but Eliezer needed to make sure that she was a woman of kindness, someone who knew the appropriate way to behave, someone who would show compassion to a weary traveler and his animals. And for that reason, Eliezer still needed to carry out the test in spite of the miracle. In September 2001, I had my trial Shabbat for my first position in the rabbinate in Watford. A few days later was Rosh Hashanah, and that year my birthday fell on Yom Kippur. The community voted me in, and I was told that I needed my position to be rubber stamped by Chief Rabbi Sachs before they could go ahead and count me as their new rabbi. And I went up to the head office, a little nervous, standing outside, waiting to see the chief rabbi. I was a young 20-something rabbi, concerned that maybe he won't approve of my position. Maybe he'll say it's not really for me. And as I walked nervously into his office when I was called in, I noticed that he was sitting with my CV on his desk. And he looked up at me and he said to me, Barry, let me start off by wishing you a happy birthday. Just those few words settled my nerves. I was able to relax and sit down and have a conversation with the chief rabbi where he gave me some valuable tips about what it means to be a community rabbi. And he set me on my way to where I am now. Many tributes have and will continue to be paid to Lord Sachs for his brilliance, his unequaled erudition, and his scholarly insight. But for me, that pales into insignificance compared to the kindness and warmth he showed a young aspiring rabbi in his 20s 20 years ago. In his Parshat Sefer on lessons in leadership, he ends this week's Parsha with the following message. Leaders see the destination, begin the journey, and leave behind those who will continue it. That is enough to endow a life with immortality. We've all been followers of Rabbi Sachs in his lifetime. May his teachings and kindness inspire all of us to continue his legacy, to become better, and to reach higher. Shabbat Shalom.